Luciana Spracher, Director of the City of Savannah's Municipal Archives. As part of our Hungry for History series, we are now offering mini programs called History Bites. Today, I'm pleased to bring you the life story of Mosianna Milledge, who inspired our first History Bites theme of food and drink. Mosianna Milledge is remembered to most historians as the wife of Tom Milledge and Juliet Gordon Lowe's servant who helped introduce Southern cooking in England. But we thought she deserved a little more attention to the details of her life and accomplishments. Using the City of Savannah's archival records, combined with letters of the Lowe and Gordon families, we can take a deeper look at how this woman went from enslaved servant to accomplished cook and property owner. The circumstances of Mosianna Ruth Delagal's birth are largely unknown. Census and death records provide varying ages, leading one to believe she was born in the month of October between about 1840 and 1848. The census also provides that both Mosianna and her parents were born in Georgia, but who her parents were is unknown at this time, with the exception of their last name of Delagal. The first written documentation we have regarding Mosianna's life is in relation to her husband, Tom Milledge. However, how they met and when they were married remains unknown. So now a little background on Tom. Thomas Anderson Milledge was born into slavery in Georgia around 1818. In 1844, the slave trader Wiley Woodbridge sold Andrew Lowe and Company an enslaved man named Tom for $398.92. It is assumed that this Tom is our subject, Thomas Milledge. As an enslaved servant, Tom came to work in Andrew Lowe II's household in the early 1850s. By that time, Lowe, one of Savannah's wealthiest cotton merchants, was living with his family in the elegant John Norris-designed home fronting Lafayette Square, which now bears his name. The 1860 Federal Slave Schedule listed 3 enslaved individuals as owned by Andrew Lowe, 2 males, aged 42 and 39, and 1 female, aged 15. It is likely that Tom is the 42-year-old man. As Andrew Lowe's enslaved butler, and following the Civil War and emancipation, stayed on as his servant. As the Lowe's servant and butler, Tom likely waited on both the British novelist William Makepeace Thackeray in the 1850s and Robert E. Lee in 1870. It is believed that Thackeray, best known for his 1848 novel Vanity Fair, used Tom as the model for one of the characters in his book The Virginians, which he was working on during one of his visits to the home. Tom apparently earned the trust of Lowe over the years, as he was given a great deal of authority, as he was often left in sole charge of the Savannah residence while the Lowe family spent time in England. In her journal, Lowe's daughter Jessie wrote of a visit to Savannah in 1880, saying, quote, "Tom would not have another man to help him. Tom is always coming up to me and saying, 'Miss Jessie, you tell me what you like to eat, and I get it.' He is a nice old chap, but is beginning to look old, though." As a free man, Tom's life begins to be documented in local records independent of Andrew Lowe. On July 9, 1868, he registered to vote in Savannah. The register documents that he was marked as colored, 44 years of age, a laborer, and lived on Lafayette Square in Lafayette Ward. Throughout the 1870s and 1880s, he appears in the Savannah City directories. However, he is not documented in the city's tax digest, suggesting that he did not own property that would generate taxes for the city. In Andrew Lowe's 1879 will, he made accommodation for, quote, his faithful colored servant Tom Milledge to receive $300 per year for the remainder of his life. However, Tom died 4 months before Lowe's own death, and he never received this annual income. On February 7, 1886, Thomas Milledge died of dropsy. Today we refer to this as edema, or swelling caused by excess fluids in your body. He was buried the following day in Laurel Grove South Cemetery in a funeral attended by Eureka Lodge No. 1 of Colored Freemasons and the Forest City Light Infantry. The Savannah Morning News reported his passing in an obituary titled "Death of an Old-Time Servant." They noted in this, that, quote, Milledge was for many years a tried and trusted servant who had gained the respect of both the white and black communities. And they went on to say, quote, he was noted for his strict honesty and fidelity and was one of the few of the old-time colored servants now rapidly passing away, end quote. The Morning News, the local white paper, seemed to focus on Tom's life as a servant and his connection to Andrew Lowe, whereas the Savannah Tribune, the local black paper, published a lengthy resolution passed by Hilton Lodge No. 2 FAM, which held up Tom as, quote, a brother who was ever ready to proffer the hand of aid and the voice of sympathy to the needy and distressed of the fraternity, a friend and companion who is dear to us all, a citizen whose upright and noble life was a standard of emulation to his fellows, end quote. Their focus was on Thomas Milledge, the man, not the servant. Andrew Lowe erected this tombstone in Laurel Grove on his grave. It's engraved with the epitaph, for many years the faithful friend and servant of Andrew Lowe of Savannah, faithful unto death. It is believed that Tom's actual birthday is unknown, and the birth date on the headstone of August 20th, 1818, was used by Lowe in the absence of documentation of his birth, common for those born into slavery. Let's turn our attention back to Mosianna now. Mosianna was about 20 years younger than her husband, and it is unknown if she was enslaved at the time of her marriage, though widely believed she was. In the 1860 slave schedule we looked at earlier, there was one female, age 15, listed as property of Andrew Lowe, which could fit the approximate birth year for Mosianna. She also does not appear in the city's Free Persons of Color register, making it likely that she was also enslaved. While Tom was often referred to in the shadow of Andrew Lowe, Mosianna makes her first appearances in the shadow of Tom. In an August 1865 letter from Eliza Stiles to her husband, she writes, Tom has his wife and child here now, a baby 5 weeks old, but so far she has done nothing for me. I kind of think she might have had her hands full with a baby of 5 weeks. Stiles went on to note that, I keep all the keys and give out things, but Tom buys the marketing according to his pleasure. Stiles' actions and attitude show how the elite slaveholding population was transitioning to the new freedom of their servants. Mosianna's first major documented role was that of mother. The couple had at least 4 children, William, born around 1857, Thomas Jr., born around 1865 to 1867. This may have been the baby Eliza Stiles mentioned. Mary, born around 1870 to 1877, and Rebecca, born around 1880. This record for William was taken for the U.S. Freedmen's Bank and indicates the family was living in the carriage house behind the Lowe home in 1869. In 1880 and 1883, newspapers list Mary attending the Beach Institute for school. The 1900 census listed Rebecca at school, and in June 1904, the Savannah Morning News published the list of graduates from Georgia State Industrial College, now Savannah State University, and it included Rebecca graduating from the normal department. Thomas Jr. married a Lizzie and worked as a porter for a couple of companies, including the Southern Pine Company. Based on a variety of records, it seems the 3 younger children lived with their mother until her death in 1909. Mary died in 1942 when she was working as a domestic, and Rebecca died in 1965. Both were buried in Laurel Grove South Cemetery. This generation of the Milledge family deserves a more thorough examination of their individual lives than we can cover for this program. Mosianna earned international fame through her work as the servant and cook of Juliet Gordon Lowe, the founder of the Girl Scouts. Juliet, known as Daisy, married Willie Lowe, Andrew Lowe's son, and the couple took up residence in the Lafayette Square house, where Mosianna was still living and working after Tom's death. As Daisy and Willie's nuptials approached at the end of 1886, the house was prepared for them, at which time Jessie Lowe, Willie's sister, wrote, "We miss old Tom awfully. He always saw to everything. Mosianna seems quite useless, and either can't or won't work, so we must engage someone to help us with the housework. We have got the same old cook and a new manservant called James. Then there is Tommy, Tom's son, who is a smart, funny boy. We engaged a white housemaid to help Mosianna, as she does simply nothing. These comments are similar to Eliza Styles' remarks in 1865 about Mosianna, but it would be under Daisy that her service transitioned from housework to cooking, and she was able to shine and finally receive praise for her work. Once married, Willie and Daisy moved into the Lowe family house, and Mosianna began cooking for them. In the biography, Lady from Savannah, it was noted that Daisy, quote, had a large staff of servants, with Mosianna Milledge presiding in the kitchen. Mosianna's cooking rivaled Liza Hendry's, to the latter's acute discomfort and jealousy. The Lowe parties were delightful, but their dinner parties soon became famous, end quote. Historians note that Mosianna's cooking was considered among the best in Savannah. It seems that Mosianna had no small part in the success of Daisy in Savannah's social circles. Willie and Daisy split their time between Savannah and England, and on one trip over the Atlantic, Daisy brought Mosianna with her. At the Lowe's Wellesbourne house in Warwickshire, Mosianna made a big imprint. In a letter to her mother in 1892, Daisy reported that guests requested the peach-fed hams her mother shipped to her, and many delectable, and to the British unusual, recipes from her Savannah cook, Mosianna Milledge. In addition to the Smithfield hams, these recipes included okra, sweet potatoes, pecan pies, brandied peaches, and waffles. In her book, The Warwickshire Scandal, Lady Elizabeth Hamilton recounted that Daisy would entertain Edward Albert, the Prince of Wales, to dinner cooked by her colored cook, Mosianna Milledge, and by the ever-popular Rosa Lewis. The prince was always happy to dine anywhere if he knew Rosa Lewis would be there, and the Lowes tickled his palate with unfamiliar delicacies. Rosa Lewis would one day become known as the Queen of Cooks, but early in her career she worked as a general servant or scullery maid for the Lowes at Wellesbourne. Here she met Mosianna, who initiated her into the secrets of making perfect rice and gave her many recipes for Southern cooking. Rosa would go on to own the Cavendish Hotel in London and became famous for her American Southern style of cooking, learned from Mosianna. According to the biography Lady from Savannah, Mosianna grew homesick, and Daisy let her return to Georgia. Keep in mind that she still had young children at home during this period. In the 1890s, she began investing her income into real estate in the Beach Institute neighborhood. In April 1893, the city of Savannah issued a building permit to her to construct a dwelling on Davis Street, which we now call Gaston. Mosianna's new home was completed in 1894, as documented in the city's tax digest. The structure, a two-story frame carpenter Italianate home, was valued at $900. And in 1897, the city collected $16.89 in property taxes for this home. In 1897, the city also approved a second building permit for Mosianna to add a kitchen to the back of her home, with the provision that it be covered with a tin roof. In 1908, another building permit was issued to enlarge a room in the rear and build a double porch on the front. The house doesn't exhibit a second-story porch today, so it is unknown if any of this work was completed. In 1900, she purchased the lot butting up to the rear of her property and built a double house valued at $1,300. Unfortunately, this structure has been torn down. From city directories, it appears that this property was used as rental and income-producing property. By 1907, Mosianna's real estate was valued at $3,065. When Mosianna prepared her will in 1902, she left her home and all her personal property to her daughters, Mary and Rebecca, to share equally. She left the second property, behind the house on Hartridge Street, to her son Thomas Jr. There was no mention of her eldest son William in her will. Mosianna Ruth Delagal Milledge died on July 9, 1909. Her death is documented in both the city's death registers and our burial transfer records. which record her as age 61 and a native Savannian. This is the first record to indicate she was born in Savannah. Her occupation was noted as housekeeper, and she died at her home at 513 East Gaston Street. Dr. W.C. Blockman attended to her, and she died after 14 days suffering from right hemiplegia. Hemiplegia is a symptom that involves one-sided paralysis, and the most common cause of it is a stroke. So this report likely indicates that Mosianna died of a stroke. She was buried in Laurel Grove South Cemetery in an unmarked grave, and it is believed she's buried next to Tom. There is little known about the personal details of Mosianna's life in Savannah. The 1880 census reported that she could neither read nor write, but by the 1900 census she was listed as able to both read and write. In 1900, the city fined her for violating the city's dog badge ordinance, indicating she had a dog, and here you can see from the mayor's fine docket, her charge was dismissed. In many ways, she was just an ordinary Savannah citizen, but during her lifetime, she went from enslaved servant to wife and mother, domestic servant, accomplished and praised cook, to finally a property owner who built her own house, leaving behind an estate and legacy for her children to benefit from. I hope you have enjoyed learning about Mosianna Milledge and her extraordinary life. I'd like to thank the Andrew Lowe House Museum and the Juliet Gordon Lowe Birthplace for sharing their research on the Milledges. Here are also just a few of the sources that I utilized in this presentation. If you are interested in exploring the Municipal Archives collections, please visit our website at www.savannahga.gov/municipalarchives. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you when we do our next History Bite.